Pam Bondi stepped out on the Late Show stage, studio lights blazing off her blue top. Her red smile covered over the tension hanging in the room, where millions of people gathered to await the next step in her political battle with Stephen Colbert. Earlier, Colbert had welcomed her with a biting comment. Tonight, we have Trump's defender, who has apparently forgotten her oath to the Constitution. The audience erupted in laughter as Colbert's quip hit its target. Bondi was not there to be anyone's punching bag. This was her chance to turn the tables. With years of legal experience and a calm, steady presence, she was not going to let Colbert get his way here. What ensued was an unexpected twist. Colbert, the liberal darling for his quick wit and ability to dismantle conservative arguments, was fumbling, struggling to land a punch. This was not another political sit-down interview. It was the moment Pam Bondi stood firm and surprised even Colbert's loyal viewers. Before we dive into the details of this amazing face-off, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more heated political confrontations and behind-the-scenes drama. The studio was charged as Stephen Colbert delivered his monologue, firing insults at conservative legends to the delight of his liberal audience. Having built a career on political satire, Colbert's jokes were ready to tear down any right-wing guest. He was in top form. When he introduced Bondi, the audience responded with a divided reaction, a mix of applause and murmurs. The atmosphere was electric, the stage for what would prove to be a fiery exchange. Bondi, 56, was no stranger to combative debates. As Florida's first woman attorney general, she had prosecuted human trafficking cases and led high-profile legal battles. She had now arrived to defend conservative values on Colbert's famously liberal stage, and tension was at a high. Bondi wasn't just some run-of-the-mill Trump defender. She had been one of his loudest advocates during his first impeachment and had most recently commented on election integrity, putting her squarely in Colbert's crosshairs. This was Colbert's opportunity to score points leading up to the midterms, but for Bondi, it was an opportunity to stand her ground, state her case, and take on one of the most vocal and influential late-night personalities. The entire conservative movement was waiting to see if Bondi would be able to stand her ground or be summarily dismissed. There was tension between Colbert and Bondi as they shook hands. Colbert's smile didn't quite reach his eyes, and Bondi's grip was firm, signaling that this would be no ordinary interview. "Pam, thanks for coming into the lion's den," Colbert quipped, punctuating the phrase with air quotes, causing the audience to laugh. "I go anywhere to speak truth, Stephen." Even here, Bondi replied smoothly, earning a surprised reaction from the crowd. Colbert raised an eyebrow, sensing that this would not be the easy interview he was looking forward to. "Let's start with the basics," Colbert said, oozing with doubt. "You defended a twice-impeached president, advanced baseless accusations of election fraud. How do you justify that with your past job as Attorney General, where you swore to uphold the law?" The audience erupted into applause, Colbert's opening salvo landing its target. Bondi was unfazed. "That's a novel way to start, Stephen. I took an oath to the Constitution, not the Republican Party. And that's why, when I saw alarm about the integrity of elections, I weighed in. Any good prosecutor thinks about when things don't seem right." Colbert, always ready with a riposte, fired back with feigned shock. "Processes don't seem right? / 60 court cases found no evidence of widespread fraud. Your guy lost fair and square." The audience roared in agreement. Bondi, however, stood her ground. "If you'd let me finish, those cases were dismissed on procedural grounds. The evidence was never fully examined. But let me bring us back to the real issues, like the border crisis and the fentanyl epidemic killing thousands of Americans." Colbert waved his hand dismissively. "We'll get to that later. Let's stick to the talking points for now." The crowd chuckled. Bondi's ability to deflect Colbert's attempts to box her in was becoming evident. Colbert pressed on, poking at Bondi's stance on the election. "But you're here defending baseless claims, aren't you? You're out there on networks pushing unfounded election fraud stories." "No, Stephen," Bondi replied with grace. "I'm here to fight for the truth. I've seen it firsthand as a prosecutor when the facts don't add up. Just because you don't agree with an opinion doesn't make a conspiracy." Colbert, realizing he wasn't getting the fight, changed tack. All right, let's get to your work now. You've denounced the Biden administration's border performance as an intentional failure. Do you really think it's some sort of grand conspiracy to open the gates for criminals? Bondi, her voice firm, did not flinch. It's not a conspiracy if it's happening in plain sight. I've been to the border and talked to Border Patrol agents who have their hands tied. This is a humanitarian and security crisis. The studio buzzed with murmurs as Colbert leaned in. But your solution is just building a wall and separating families. That's your answer? Bondi shook her head. That's a strawman argument, and you know it. We want legal immigration and border security. This has nothing to do with breaking up families. It's about keeping people safe and secure, including the people who are being trafficked by cartels. The exchange continued, but Colbert increasingly was on the offensive. Sensing weakness, Colbert seized on Bondi's record. Interesting, he said. You claim to be a champion of law and order, but weren't you criticized for taking a $25,000 contribution from Trump's foundation within a few months before your office chose not to file fraud charges against Trump University? The audience gasped as Colbert's accusation hit with a telling sting. But Bondi did not flinch. I was waiting for you to go there, Stephen, she panted. Let me instruct you and your listeners on the facts. The donation was made to my campaign committee, not to me personally, and why the case wasn't pursued is because New York already had its hands full of it. But I'm happy you mentioned transparency. Let's talk about the millions of dollars pouring into the Biden family from foreign sources, okay? The room fell silent. Colbert, taken aback by Bondi's calm but pointed response, tried to regain control. Well, we're not talking about Biden right now, he stammered. Bondi would not back down. Right. But when you call me out for a $25,000 contribution, where's the same scrutiny for everybody else? Where's the outrage over the millions being raised from dubious sources? Bondi inched closer, her tone unwavering. That's the problem, Stephen. It's selective outrage. If you want to have a real conversation, we can start with holding everybody to the same standard of expectations. Colbert, clearly upset, attempted to regain on course. All right, let's stick to your ongoing work then. Sure, Bondi replied calmly, but I think your listeners caught on to the way you just tried to shift the subject when I asked you some uncomfortable facts. The audience, shocked by the directness of Bondi's statement, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. It was clear the usual Colbert trick wasn't going to work. Colbert, being the pro that he is, attempted one final time to steer the subject. So, you've been vocal about the Justice Department's reaction too. Let's address that, Bondi interrupted, seizing the moment. But I also believe we should address the broader problem. When we apply varying standards to various extremes of the political spectrum, everyone loses. The crowd was tense, their reactions divided but engaged. Colbert, realizing his standard tricks were failing, reluctantly acknowledged her argument. We're short on time, Colbert asserted. Try to regain control. Yes, convenient, Bondi snapped back, grinning. But let me leave you and your audience with this. Good government relies on honest debate and consistent principles. When we play double standards, we all lose. The interview ended, and the camera panned to a normally rowdy studio that today was unusually quiet. Bondi's presence had changed the tenor of the room, so Colbert had no choice but to finish the segment with uncomfortable politeness. Pam Bondi left her stage with head held high. The audience, still stunned by the exchange, couldn't help but admit that she had bested Colbert. For Colbert, this would be a moment when the usual script was flipped on its head. For Bondi, it was a career-defining moment, not just as a Trump supporter, but as a vocal advocate for free speech and civil discourse. As the credits rolled, viewers recognized this wasn't the usual late-night political battle. It was something much more unusual, an actual debate.